Welcome to the LDT Lecture Speaker Series. I'm Mareo-Ahmir Lawson, president of the LDT Society at Rossier. And we're excited to invite you all to the first annual LDT eBoard speaker panel, hosted by Cassandra Deagrella and myself. And I just wanted to get out there, first of all, I know this is April Fool's Day, but this is not a joke. So we're here today to really talk about some stuff and get together with a panel of eBoard speakers who eBoard previous members who have been on the eBoard for the LDT Society the previous year. If I can't get tongue-tied today, but let's get to it. Moderating the panel is Melania Aslanian. She's a former president of the LDT Society and my eBoard presidential mentor. She works as a learning designer at Entertainment Partners, which is a major part of the mortar of the Hollywood films, television, and video productions in Los Angeles and around the globe, of course. She's a veteran instructional designer, and prior to the Entertainment Partners, she briefly worked in HR at Walt Disney. Melania obtained her master's in education, learning design and technology, in 2021. And she also has a bachelor's degree in anthropology from the University of California, Los Angeles. And we got Dante Treggs. He's going to be one of our other panelists. He's going to be, since Melania's moderating, he's our first panelist in this. Dante Treggs is the first and former vice president, Dante, all right, former vice president of the LDT Society and my Cardinal and Gold mentor last year. He's a founder of Plus, personalized learning for urban students. And he worked at Linda Mood Learning Processes, where he has had wore a couple of hats, including educational consultant and mentor and trainer. He's also another experienced instructional designer and has also worked as a deckhand on a riverboat. I didn't know that. So Dante obtained his master's in education, learning design and technology from USC in 2021. And he also has a bachelor's in psychology from Lee's McRae College. Then we have Jennifer Gomez. Welcome back. Jennifer is a former outreach officer of LDT Society. And I remember her being our main point of contact. I remember spending a lot of email messages back and forth between Jennifer, and she was keeping us in line and keeping us going as we joined the Cardinal and Gold mentorship program. Love this program. And so she works as a teacher at Charter Oak Unified School District, where she has worn various hats as well, teaching English, also English as a second language to adults. The Cardinal and Gold program wasn't her first rodeo at mentoring either. She was also a business mentor and peer advisor at Cal Poly Pomona. Jennifer, of course, obtained her master's in education, learning design, and technology from USC in 2021. And she has her bachelor's in business administration management and human resources, where she earned at Cal Poly Pomona, where she earned a teaching credential in secondary education and teaching. And a little bit later on, about halfway in, we're going to see Kaya Hill, and she's a former program officer and fellow Rossier graduate student ambassador. She works as a learning design and technology specialist at Jazz Hands for Autism, and they do a lot of great work within different communities. I know because my nephew is autistic, and he definitely is involved in different communities, and Jazz Hands for Autism was one that I just heard about recently. So I'm glad to hear that. She previously was an instructional design assistant at USC Keck School of Medicine, a medical education coordinator at Alta Med Health Services, a medical education associate at Community Health Network, and administrative research assistant at Purdue University. Kaya obtained her master's in education of learning design and technology, another course at USC in 2021. And she also has her bachelor's in biology, focusing on public health administration, and a minor in law and society from Purdue University. I'm so excited to have this panel here today. And I know that was a long introduction, but I love to give the love back to everything that these panelists and our moderator have put into the LDT Society. A lot of great work, and I'm happy to see them today. And so I hand it over to Melania Aslanian.
Thank you, Mario, for that awesome introduction. Definitely excited to get started with this discussion. So let's go ahead. So hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with all of you and our former LDT eBoard members. I truly miss being a part of the LDT academic community. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us here. And so all of us on the eBoard were responsible for different initiatives in the program. And we're excited to talk about all things learning and development today. So I'll start off our discussion. Mario, I know, gave really good introductions for each of us on the eBoard, but we want to dive a little bit deeper and talk about some of the main responsibilities that each of us are in charge of in our day-to-day tasks, so at work. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with Dante. So if you can go ahead and tell us a little bit more about what you do. What's a typical day like for Dante?
Definitely. Again, thank you, Mario, for the introduction, and thank you, Melania. As Mario mentioned, I am the founder and CIO of Plus. CIO is Chief Instructional Officer, and there I'm an educational consultant for multiple groups and corporations, and I contract and do individualized educational and universal learning experiences that make sure they're accessible for everyone who's trying to learn. A typical day involves meeting teachers of different students, collaborating with neuroprofessionals, working with tech teams, graphic designers, instructors, you name it, SMEs, everything. I probably do about 8 different things from our instructional design class a day.
Awesome. Thank you, Dante. So definitely using the multitasking skills there. Alrighty, Jennifer, if you could go ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dante.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody. So I actually wear multiple hats as well. I don't only just teach at a middle school level. I also teach at the adult education level, both of where I am teaching, but I also am a lead or the department advisor for both English as a second language at both the middle school level and the adult level. So obviously, my day-to-day, I'm going to be working with the students, but after that, I actually do put in a lot of hours designing curriculum for English as second language students now. I'm looking and I'm finding better resources that we can use for them because all of our materials are outdated. So I'm part of that process to make sure that we're using the correct and best type of curriculum for our students. And I'm also leading a lot of professional development sessions now as well for both the middle school and the adult level with all of my certificated peers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So I know Kaya is going to join us in just in a little bit, but Kaya completed her capstone to deliver a Train the Trainer program in learning management systems. And she now works as a private learning consultant with executive teams, helping large Fortune 500 organizations, small startups and nonprofits that transform their learning ecosystem to curate deep and meaningful learning experiences in a community of practice while improving the learning department's primary functions in instructional design, technology, strategic planning, assessment, and evaluation and operations. So I think it's safe to say we were super busy when we were in the LDT program and working, and it does definitely sound like we're even busier now. So thank you so much for that insightful information. And so moving on to our next topic. So as many of you know, there are a lot of valuable tools we've obtained from the program, from the toolkit to informative articles about various learning environments to our lectures. And so now that you've graduated, what are some things you're utilizing from the LDT program in your everyday jobs? What are some of the things that you've really taken from the program and are applying it to your workplace? Jennifer, I'll start with you on this one.
Perfect. So one of the biggest things that I took away and something that I love talking about in my capstone was the learning environment. Every group of learners is very different. And obviously through COVID, we've kind of made that shift from being online back to in person. A lot of students were scared. So I took that opportunity to make the classroom more about them. What do they want to see in there? How is it going to feel like they're home away from home? Because if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be willing to be engaged. Okay. So that's the other part that I took about this. Where is the value that I'm creating for all of my learners? What are we going to talk about? Why are they here? Even as middle schoolers who are supposed to be there, they still need to see value in what it is that they're doing. So we have those conversations where I get to know my learners first and foremost before even diving into the teaching. That's where my relationships are built. And that's where I do all of my learning, is building off of their interests and their values and saying, okay, now this relates to this, continuing to scaffold that learning. Remember when we did this, and applying it here. It's things like that that the LDT program really showed me how to implement. It's like I always knew what they were, but it was never like, here is a strategic way to go about it. Beyond that, again, I'm starting to build some of that curriculum. So I'm looking back at Kirkpatrick, I'm looking back at the ADDIE model, and I'm actually thinking, okay, what is my end goal? What is it that I want my faculty and staff to learn? And let's work backwards from that. So applying all of those philosophies and theories into my everyday actually has been super successful in trying to help make sure that we're meeting the goals that my capstone actually talked about. I'm taking that capstone and actually bringing it to life with all of my faculty and staff, and making sure our English learners are valued and have an equitable learning experience in the classroom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. I couldn't agree more. Catching and holding the learner's interest, understanding your audience, really taking the time to dive deep and understand what that learning experience is going to look like. But before we do that, taking a look at our learners and really understanding the goals involved. So thank you. Thank you so much. Dante?
Yeah, I think Jennifer took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Understanding the learner is definitely going to be key to everything you do, first and foremost. I also like to say, I think just the collaborating and learning how to work with different professionals across the field, kind of like we do now, like you guys do now in your cohort. It makes the job easier when you work as an instructional designer. You're coming in to help a lot of people, especially when you're training them, whether they're adults learning a new language, or in film industry, where Kaya is working with Jazz Hands for Autism. And I've actually got to work on a project with her where she's training those instructors to become better instructors and develop a curriculum. You're coming in to tell someone that I'm going to tell you how to make your job more effective. I'm not your job, but what you do more effective. And sometimes a lot of people may not take that in the best light, but learning how to collaborate and deliver that feedback in an effective manner, and like making sure they feel like they were part of that growth series, is super important. So delivering feedback to the learner as well.
Thank you, Dante. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I definitely do find myself pulling information about learning and motivation and educating my peers and stakeholders, and really just having those conversations and collaborating. It's absolutely important in this entire process. And so with Kaya, she also still refers to the LDT toolkit as well, and some of the textbooks such as Instructional Design by Smith and Reagan and the Assessment and Evaluation. So definitely a lot of helpful tools. And so
I keep my toolkit printed still.
Yeah,
right
I think we all have it framed somewhere in our home offices. Yeah, exactly. And so one thing that I think definitely impacted our class especially is COVID-19. And so I think that definitely transformed many lives in many different ways. And so with that being said, one of the transitional topics I'd like to go into is, we were working in office environments, then we suddenly transitioned to work from home and began to create more and more online experiences. And we were thinking of ways to engage our audience more from a distance. And so how did COVID-19 impact the specific learning environments that you guys work in? And Dante, I'll let you go ahead and take this one first.
I love that question, but I'm going to get back to that, but COVID-19. I think for me, COVID-19 made online instruction necessary. When it first happened, all of us were trying to figure out how to become online friendly and make sure that we had the most effective instruction. And I think within 3 or 4 years, I don't know if anyone got that perfect, to be honest. But now with COVID, I think when I think about COVID, it's actually that transition back into in-person instruction. And kind of what I mentioned before earlier was the learner and what they feel comfortable doing, and how they learn, how when they're comfortable and whether or not they're comfortable affects how they learn. And so now we have a lot of people going back into in-person instruction, and a lot of people need that human interaction, and some people don't feel comfortable doing it. And so making sure that you have a hybrid solution to offer to both people who want human interaction or who feel more comfortable at home right now is crucial. I think that's just always at the forefront of my mind. I do field experience, in field experiences, and then sometimes I'm on the computer. So having that availability for people right now, I think COVID in general just made it accessible for all. We learn about universal access and thinking about how do we make it accessible for all, especially in terms of how they feel comfortable with their health.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you, Dante. And I know we talked about it in the program. Navigating learner anxiety was something I remember we talked about. If I'm not mistaken, that was in the toolkit. And so I think that's even more crucial now in the time that we're living in. And we're transitioning again now exactly towards that potential hybrid model. So absolutely. Thank you. Jennifer, please go ahead.
All right, so building off of what Dante said, that sense of comfort, it's one thing, especially when I'm working with children, they could turn off their cameras, they have this little corner in the wall, they can lay on their bed. They were comfortable. Were they fully learning? Well, we'll see what data shows a few years from now. But in terms of them transitioning back into the classroom, I think that's the most important part about talking about COVID and what the impact was that return to classroom phase. And we noticed very many learner gaps and a lot more anxiety in terms of participation, in terms of engagement. For example, I had my students do their first oral presentation about a month ago, and there was many students who just could not get in front of the classroom. And I was like, wait, what's happening? I've never had this problem before. Oh yeah, these kids have been online for 2 years. We never had them present in Zoom. It was more like do a screencastify and submit that. So it's really about learning about where are they now, both physically, emotionally, mentally, because that has changed. We're not dealing with the same people anymore. Some of us are more comfortable and can learn better in an online environment, and some of us just need that physical presence. So it's a matter of, okay, so we are educators, we learn how to differentiate, we learn how to adapt. If some of my students feel more comfortable recording their presentations and submitting that, perfect. They're still working on their volume, their presentation skills, they're still working on multimedia. They're still doing everything, but in a sense that is more comfortable with them. So learning again about your learners and really being able to differentiate that learning is everything that I've taken away from COVID.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And it's creating the engaging experience and making sure that, I know we talked about a change in long-term memory, that learning takes place when there's a change in long-term memory. And so however we have to adapt to make sure that takes place, that's one of our goals. And so Kaya also shared with us that COVID-19 definitely impacted the learning environment she works in, and converting from synchronous programs to fully asynchronous. This required vetting a variety of different technology tools, such as content management systems, learning management systems, project management, communication, and survey platforms. And so when it comes to designing a learning experience, I know we have a few favorites. What's important to you during that process? Dante, I'll go ahead and start with you on this one.
All of it. No, but I think the most, if I have to pick, it's definitely going to be the evaluation process. And I don't know, I'm sure my instructor mentioned it and your professor does too. It's left on the back burner for a lot of stakeholders. They usually, and especially in adult training, sometimes that idea of assessing whether they really obtain the knowledge and then can utilize it later and apply it. And that future evaluation is difficult to sometimes implement, but it's my favorite part because it gives you the chance to reiterate the process and make changes that are going to be super effective.
Absolutely. Love feedback, love seeing all of that and knowing how you can go back and make it better for the next time around. So absolutely. Thank you so much. Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, Dante, that's exactly what I was going to say. Besides that evaluation, besides checking up a week later, 2 months later, depending on the process, I'll go with my second favorite, which is the analysis phase. Okay, really identifying that gap. Where do we need some growth? That's one of my favorite things to do, because that's the only way you know that your entire curriculum is actually going to resonate with people. If there is no gap, why are we doing this? People are going to just go in and not want to take their time and do these things. So identifying your learners, identifying the gap, making sure the learning environment there, all part of the ADDIE model, all part of the analysis phase. That's my second favorite part besides the feedback, but Dante got to it first.
No worries. Absolutely. Totally agree. Understanding the why, the gap, that's only going to guide you in an effective manner as you go and build all the other parts of the learning experience. And so with Kaya, her favorite part or most important part are the learners and conducting a thorough needs assessment. She also believes that's very important as well. So like Dante said, they're all important, but if we had to pick. And so next question is, what motivates you and keeps you going? What's that one thing that keeps you going as a learning professional in this field? Jennifer, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Oh, geez. So for me, it's, especially as an educator, I think we all have to identify our why. Why are we doing what we're doing? That's what keeps you motivated, especially during the times of COVID when everything has just felt like 10 times more your load. And even coming back into physical presence, it feels different. So my why is that moment of seeing students, something just clicks in their head, or having a student say, I couldn't do this and now I can. Or even saying, like, them just acknowledge each other and be like, oh, they just did that. Because they do that once they start to get comfortable, once they start to be in this environment where they know that mistakes are okay. I make mistakes all the time and I call them out. If my students don't call it out, I'm just like, wait, okay, we need a backup. Did you acknowledge that I just made a mistake and I'm okay, I'm still going? So the more that any learners, even my adult learners, the more they get comfortable and they start being proud of themselves, that is what keeps me going. It is a great motivator for me, and it's a great motivator for them. It's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. It's a gratifying experience, and you want to constantly just provide more support in any way you can. And there's this resource and there's this, and let's set aside some time to talk about this topic. I experienced that as well in my workplace. Dante, please go ahead.
Yep, me and Jennifer just have the same answers, you guys, for everything. So
Yeah.
No, but I think she's hit the nail on the head. Seeing people feel like thrive in the accomplishments of others is why we do what we do. Or like when they come in, tell you they tried something you've taught them and it worked. And they go, I did what you said and it worked. And I was thinking about doing this. And then they start to produce their own ideas on how they can grow themselves. It's just so worthwhile. Yeah.
Exactly. They're the heart of this entire experience, the people. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Dante. And Kaya also shared with us that transforming the learning ecosystem to curate deep and meaningful learning experiences while cultivating a strong community of practice is what motivates her as well. Alrighty. So,
And Amarina, I just want to touch on this right now because we're talking about that, and I think that's a great question. As part of my independent contracting, I developed an app in a training with the CDC and for type 2 diabetes prevention. And it was just an awesome experience. But much like your question, I didn't get to see whether the app users or the learners are like whether or not they like really took what I said in, like I wasn't contacting them. But I think what's really cool as instructional designers is we look at those type of things, and that's a part of the feedback is creating those portfolios or opportunities for these people to show their weight loss journey or the journey they're on. So checking on the app or when they were posting their pictures back to the app, or they get to post their shopping pictures of this is what I went and I bought this. They don't know that I designed it, but I get to see these people now posting their shopping list and learning from something I've created for them. And so you see them interacting. If you use the appropriate technology, of course, you do get that social part of it too. So it's really cool.
thank you, Dante, for sharing insight for that question. Alrighty, so we talked about working with a lot of different people, from subject matter experts to different stakeholders throughout our various work environments. And so, in your opinion, what do you think makes a great team player? Because that's definitely a skill set I think we definitely need to exhibit in this field. So, Dante, I'll go ahead and start with you.
I think listening and then empathy, being able to understand where others come from.
Absolutely.
I think if you have those two things, you're able to do the other things that are necessary as an instructional designer.
Absolutely. Jennifer?
So besides listening, I want to say adaptability. Sometimes what you think is the right thing won't be good for one of your stakeholders. I work very closely with my district, with my English learner program, and sometimes we just don't agree on things. So it's a matter of, okay, how can we come to a consensus on something? How can we talk it out? So that ability to communicate and to adapt, I think those are two really big qualities that you need to have as a team player.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Couldn't agree more. And so with Kaya, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dante.
Sorry, and if I could jump on,
Sure, of course.
Jennifer, the adaptiveness is actually quite key. Sometimes we go in with this mindset that we're the instructional designers, and we know this, and you work with this group who may have never had one, or they've implemented things differently. And so you have to be adaptive in your approach and how you're going to be effective with this group.
Absolutely. Having those conversations and knowing that, the initial plan, there might be things that change along the way. And that's just the nature of how things work in our field. It's coming up with a plan, and then you might have other meetings with other subject matter experts or other stakeholders. You gain all this new information, and then suddenly it might change your initial plan, and it might make it better, not necessarily in a bad light. So, alrighty. So I'm going to wrap up with actually our last question here. Technology, of course, is absolutely something that we utilize when we are creating our learning experiences. And so what kind of technology do you guys leverage for your learners? So Jennifer, I'll let you take this one first.
All right. So the wonderful thing about the pandemic is that thankfully it made most districts one-to-one in technology. So all of my students have Chromebooks. So we're just making sure we utilize every aspect of that. And taking from the LDT program, looking at the things that I needed to use, the resources I needed to use. We all needed to use Screencastify or some type of recording program. We had to use Powtoon or different things like that. So I actually have my students creating a lot of their multimedia presentations and recording them on such things like Screencastify and creating their own avatars. We're not all the way over to Powtoon, especially because no district is ever going to pay for me to have that. But we are using other resources that are similar like that, so they can get that experience. If they are not in person, they can still deliver a great presentation, and they don't have to feel like they're ever left behind. So really utilizing that to make sure that there are no learning gaps.
Absolutely. And I think it also enhances their creativity, gives them a chance to hone in on those skills as well. Dante, please go ahead.
I think that I use a lot of different technologies, Moodle, Canva, networking, and app integration. But something I really like to focus on is assessing the usefulness of the technology. I think with a lot of the groups we get, especially since COVID, like Jennifer said, is there's so many apps out there now who want to help teachers give feedback, or who want to help students talk here, and there's just so many apps. I saw Kaya jump in and almost said jump in, so excuse me. But there's apps galore for learning and learning possibilities. But really, which one is going to be the most useful for you and your company? And so I do a lot of assessing that to make sure that we're not just going off and trying to get the newest and best thing, but using the most appropriate media for us.
Absolutely. And, it's exactly making sure that it's applicable to your needs. And I think another thing that plays a big part in that is also the budget. That's also something that we have to consider. Yes, there's absolutely, a lot of tools that are free out there, but then of course there are a lot that have subscription-based plans, monthly plans, annual plans. And so understanding and incorporating the budget in there, I know we learned that in the program, understanding the cost of the learning experience is definitely something that we have to consider as well when we're trying to leverage technology and embed embedded into our experience. And so Kaya, thank you for joining us. We went ahead and we were able to share your insight for many of the topics. So what kind of technology do you leverage for your learners? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on to what everyone's probably already said. We're talking about learning management systems, authoring tools, different platforms for surveys or communications, and then reiterating, right? We want to think about cost and the actual process. Are we overcomplicating the task by trying to get technology to do it? It's not, it's supposed to enhance a process, not, distract. And or thinking about that audience, who's going to be using that, right? How hard will it be for them to adopt it? Maybe your audience are, old learners who have, problems using technology. And if you pick a system that's convoluted or really new on the market, it might be really cheap, but it might be harder to navigate. So really kind of holistically looking at multiple factors and what's going to be appropriate to leverage and how that's going to enhance your reporting duties for your program or enhance that learner experience.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Kaya. The consideration of understanding the prior knowledge around the technology that you're trying to embed, and if what the learning curve looks like there is definitely something that one needs to consider in that process. So thank you so much. So thank you very much for all of your responses. So I think we'll go ahead and transition, Mario, correct me if I'm wrong, into the question and answers portion of our panel discussion today.
Thank you, Melania. I'd like to thank the panel and Melania for moderating. We do have a few questions in the chat. The first two questions are from Amarina, and they say, the first one goes to Jennifer. Jennifer, it sounds like you were talking about the analysis phase. Do you feel like this is the most important phase?
Yes, so I touched on that a little bit. It's evaluation analysis for me. Okay, you can create this beautiful program, but if your learners aren't actually engaged, if they don't feel like they are taking away what they need, obviously you need to be able to make those adjustments. So the evaluation phase and the continuing to monitoring their learning, that is the most important phase. The analysis phase, so I love, again, because you are getting to know a little bit more about your learners. You're getting to really identify that learning gap. So evaluation and analysis, those are my top two. Again, like Dante said, like Kaya has said, they're all important. It's really hard to choose from, and you really get to see how beautifully they sync and how just it keeps going around in a cycle. But those are my top two right there.
Love it. Thank you. Dante, you've mentioned that you've experienced a little bit of pushback when you were implementing best practices. You also talked about accessibility. What type of pushback did you mean that you were getting?
Yeah, sometimes when you work again with the subject matter expert, they have been doing this for a while and they know what they're doing. Specifically, one example, I won't use any names, but I'm helping develop a curriculum for a music group that Kaya and I both collaborate with, and we're developing their guitar curriculum. And they've taught guitar for a certain way in a personal type of learning environment for a long time. And we're now developing a curriculum in which we break it down to the simplest function. After doing the CTA, we were able to see what that basic skill was that the learner needed to have and develop up from there. And many of the instructors are like, no, we just teach them this, you know how to pick them up. I'm like, I understand that's how you normally do it, but if I didn't know this, what would I need to know? And they don't see always the reason in which we're trying to get to the most basic unit, but once you explain that reason, it's usually very clear for them. I think that once they implement the process you create for them also, they see how seamless it is, and they're like, oh, this works so well. And then the next week, they're like, oh yeah, I see why we did this. But it's a lot of having to explain why you're doing something because they've been doing it their way for a long time.
Thank you so much. And you actually answered one of the next questions. So I'm going to skip over to Jennifer. Mario would love to know, camera on, camera off, how are your classrooms different between age range? And do you have different rules for children and adults? And how strict or lenient are you about the students using the camera or having their camera on?
Yeah, so I actually still do teach remotely for some of my classes, and I have students that are obviously from 12 years old to 14 years old, and then my adult students are anywhere from 18 to I've had about an 82-year-old in my classroom. So it's a great range, but I go about it the same way. Okay, we really talk about that learning environment aspect. And when you're at home, a lot of times people can feel a little bit uncomfortable with what it is behind them. Even I have a screen on my back, it's fine. And so I encourage that. And I also let them know, hey, I guarantee you that with your camera on, you're going to feel a little bit more engaged. Okay. But I give them the option, especially at the very beginning. You don't have to have it on if you don't feel comfortable. If at any point you do, I will gladly welcome you into the space. And I can tell you, I'm one of the very few teachers who had every single kid with their camera on and never had any issues with like what they were showing on their cameras, a bunch of parents walking around, because I let them know, I trust with what you're doing. I'm giving you that freedom. Here's what I prefer, but take of it what you will.
I love that answer. And does anybody have a similar experience in terms of how they approach camera on, camera off in their own learning environment?
When I work with my students, I do give them the option. We use it like a bartering system, actually. I'm all about like prizes and how to get the most out of our learning experience at the time. So if they want to have it off for the day, I expect 100% interaction, no questions to, hey, what's going on there? Or if you're there or not, I expect that engagement from them. And it gives them an opportunity to show, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the effort and the foot forward. They usually show their best effort when they show like, oh, he trusts me to have it off and still do my work.
That's great. Kia, do you want to contribute to the discussion, or did you already see the next question coming forward?
Pronunciation for my name.
Kaya,
comment to this too. So, I mean, just like we're using Zoom, we know that even USC uses Zoom in different platforms, and people are what we call lurkers, right? They may not actively be participating, and sometimes that's okay, but also engaging if they're not visually on camera. Hey, repeat after, kind of quiz them or something like, hey, type this into the chat, see if they're engaging, see how they're responding to it, right? It might just be that they have problems with the camera. Maybe they're having a bad hair day. Okay, that happens as well. So being just adaptive to your audience, right? Like, oh, everyone's going off camera, or I'll go off camera too if everyone doesn't feel comfortable being on camera today, but let's all unmute. So just being very strategic and like, okay, let's be flexible. What does this group find most comforting to them? And how can we still get engagement while we're online?
Keeping the questions with you, Mario would love to know, what are some of the ways that you test the use of media system adoption or adaptions in the healthcare field?
Well, different systems or media systems. I mean, if we're going to adopt something new, we usually want to create either first, always start with surveying, right? Let's see what's our target audience? What are they using now before we even try something new? What do they want to see if we use a different system, right? And then we want to pilot that. Let's get a small group of people and then introduce this new system to them. What are the hiccups, right? What are the common questions and issues, so that we can already start to create some documentation and training around how we would actually implement that with different groups and then implement that company-wide.
That's great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions that we may not have added to the chat yet? Oh, there's one more question from Melania. Mario wants to know, what was it like transitioning from school, working full time, becoming a parent, while maintaining presence as a strong woman in online meetings? She said that my question is focusing on the struggle that women face due to how some men see pregnancy in the workplace. That's a very cool.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Mario, for the strong woman in online meetings part. As far as the transition, I think motivation is definitely was huge in this part of my life, and passion. I had such a passion for learning and development and making a difference in the lives of the employees that I work with, that I think it just became, I don't know. I don't want to say, oh, it was a seamless transition and I didn't have challenges, because of course everybody has challenges that they deal with. So I think overall, you know what it was, I had the support of my family, I had the support of my friends, I had the support of my supervisor and my peers. And so the community that I had surrounding me is what kept me going. My motivation and my passion for the field is what kept me going. And just my just being a lifelong learner, loving to, I have a passion for just learning new things, collaborating with people, and just always being involved in something it's always something that I find myself doing. I'm never just focusing on one thing. And so I know maybe multitasking articles might say otherwise, but it's just kind of how I've always been. And so pregnancy was just having my first child. It was just another great life experience that I was fortunate enough to experience and have. And so without rambling on too much, I think I didn't have any, I don't think I had any struggles. The reason why serious struggles is because of the support system I had around me. And I think that's super important for anybody going through any transition in life. I think that's definitely key, making sure you have people around you who have a growth mindset. I think that's definitely important. Being able to foster that kind of mindset, because I feel like that's contagious. And, we always talk about that. We talked about it in the program, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I think that's huge. So yes, I hope I answered that to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, of course.
Mario, again, just more wonderful questions. And this question is for everyone on the panel, so feel free, whoever wants to volunteer first. He wants to know, how do all of you maintain your personal identities in the workplace and teach those of all cultures and communities?
I'll go ahead. So coming back and really recentering and remembering my why. That is honestly what keeps me going and keeps me remembering who I am. I'm not always going to agree with my administration or my district or anything like that, but I know what I stand for, and I show my kids that. I tell them that. So, and a lot of times too in the classroom, people think that you need to be very rigid, and I'm not. I will go up there and I'll be super quirky. I gave a super bad presentation to them to show them what not to do, and I did all the things that they normally do wrong, and did it so that they can see it. We're all human. You're allowed to make these mistakes. You're allowed to keep going. So I do dances. I know all these TikTok dances. I'll do them for them too, just so that they can get a laugh and feel like this is a place where you are allowed to be vulnerable. I'm being vulnerable with you. You can make fun of my dancing. You can make fun of my drawings on the boards, whatever it is, but I'm here and this is me. And all I want is for you to be able to be yourself too.
Wonderful. Anyone else wants to share?
Kaya does.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Kaya.
I mean, it goes back to that question of like being a team player, right? You might be working with a bunch of different teams who come all from different backgrounds, right? So like Jennifer said, what's the why? Why are we all here? How can we best work together? And then also understanding how you're showing up as a team member, right? Whether it's your cultural identity, how that's impacting your viewpoint on certain topics, your own personal biases that you may bring that hinders your thought process or hinders your thought process, right? So being very aware and open with that group, like, okay, I have this to add and someone wants to challenge that. How can we challenge that and be very respectful about it? Hey, you put this in here, this is problematic for people of this certain religious background. I don't like that in the instructional design, or I don't like that how, we're using that for instruction, right? So then you can promote conversations around that. You are very open to that. And that also like, hey, this is how I'm showing up. And then I think for people who I represent, who are like me, may view it that way. So bringing all of those ideas together, right? That's where the magic happened. That's where the melting pot of us being together on different, very diverse groups. So I think that's acknowledging that it's a strength and that it's something that we all encounter, whether you are Caucasian or of multicultural background, like we all have to kind of understand what we're bringing to the table.
And I think I'll just piggyback off of Kaya's response there. I also think what's interesting, it's really nice is, everyone comes together when you're in an organization, when you have a common goal, you have a common purpose. So I think being able to also take a look at the values within your organization, what your purpose is. There's this definitely that I think that's also important, being able to be on the same page and knowing what our purpose is and coming together, like she said, the melting pot, and moving forward and making sure we're getting to our goals that we're setting for not only the organization, but for ourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll move on to the last question. And this one is very similar to what we asked before, but what are some of the struggles that you guys have faced in learning design, specifically when trying to implement UDL or specifically DEI related implementation initiatives?
I'll jump in on this one.
Who's going to take the first?
I think one thing I would like, it's not a struggle, but it's a piece of advice that, because sometimes you may struggle with, is leverage your degree and leverage your knowledge that you have from USC. I don't want to sound like an elitist at all, but when you work in the instructional design field, you're going to come across many individuals who may have instructional design background, have taken courses, and I love MOOC, don't get me wrong, I love any opportunity for learning, but you are gonna have to show why the knowledge you have or the why you want to do something a certain way is possibly the best way to do things. And so using the knowledge you have, referencing articles, and making sure that you're really comfortable as yourself as an instructional designer whenever you're working in an environment, because they're going to ask you to do a lot of things. They're like, oh, you're an instructional designer? Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And you're like, whoa, this is what I came here to do, and this is what I can do, and this is what I'm really good at. And so making sure that you share that and you leverage the degree you have is going to be super helpful for you.
I'm going to jump in and agree with that. Obviously, we're coming out of this program right now. We are looking at the newest and latest research on how to apply things. So I've gotten pushback from my superiors as well. And one of my favorite things to always refer back to now is a lot of students going into their credential program are still doing learning surveys. Are you an audio learner, a visual learner, kinesthetic learner? And I'm just like, we can't do that. So I've had that pushback of like, why aren't you doing this? Why don't you know? I know my learners. I don't need that survey to do it though. And I'll show you why. So really being able to stand your ground and show them, I've done the research, I'm confident in this, trust me with the experience, and go from there.
Wonderful. Does anyone else want to add some last minute thoughts regarding the subject?
Yeah, I have something to add.
Thank you.
I think we put a lot of emphasis, right? We were like, what's the most important part of instructional design or designing? It does really go back to the needs assessment, right? You need to validate that it's appropriate, right? And then start to think about how you're going to design it. And if you don't have those, you need to understand those UDL guidelines and DEI and how that applies to every component of your needs assessment, from the appropriate format, the accessibility of your learning experience to your audience, right? So how is that audience? What are the issues, potential issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion for your target audience? And how does the administrators or other instructional designers or your team is not really recognizing that? Right. So if you had like, oh, we need to design a group for said group, and then you have a person who doesn't represent that group and doesn't really understand how this learning experience could be triggering, right? Or doesn't meet their needs. So that's where we our responsibility as being instructional, what USC is trying to help us do is be very holistic and take all of these tools and be that person who we call it the professional troublemaker, where you're going to be the one who challenges them, right? You're going to bring these evidence-based guidelines on best practices, what people are using in industry, and you're at the table asking these hard questions.
I love it. I love it. This has been an awesome panel. I really have enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm actually sending you all a message that's saying the same thing to that factor right now. I just love this. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank our panelists, our moderator, Melania Aslanian, our panelists, Dante Treggs, Jennifer Gomez, and Kaya Hill, my co-host, Cassandra Deagrella. Thank you so much. I appreciate the work you put in as well. And, and I appreciate all the guests who've come in and our current eBoard. I mean, this has been a great experience and a great learning experience for myself, and I'm sure everyone else involved. And I can't wait to share this out to the rest of our LDT community. So with that being said, I thank you all for coming, and we're just going to head out of here. We're going to make it quick and easy. We'll see you soon, folks.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Good to see everybody. Dr. Sally.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.